House of the Dragon is the new spin-off prequel series from Game of Thrones, one of the greatest and most popular shows ever made. But does it live up to the enormous hype? An internal succession war within House Targaryen at the height of its power, 172 years before the birth of Daenerys Targaryen. If you know me personally, you know I love Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is one of the best shows of all time. I think seasons 1 through 4 are flawless. I would give them all 10s. I eventually want to review the series. And then obviously, you know, what happened with really the last season. I don't really want to go into that because we'll be talking about that for days. The reason I bring that up is because when I heard they're making a spin-off prequel series to Game of Thrones, I'll be honest, I wasn't that excited for it. I really hated season 8 of Game of Thrones so much. It honestly left such a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't think I was ready to return to Westeros. I honestly didn't really care at the time when I saw a trailer. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm still thinking about what happened in season 8. But I'm not going to lie, the week leading up to that premiere, or even the day of the premiere, I got very excited. I had that same feeling I had when I would watch Game of Thrones weekly back a few years ago. And there was such anticipation, and I loved when Game of Thrones would premiere, or other shows like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, where it seems like there's an event going on tonight. It's not like it all comes out at once on streaming at like midnight or something. I love the fact that we're getting another show that comes out at like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever time zone you're in, and everyone watches it. Seems like at the same time on a Sunday night or Monday night, whenever the episode does premiere. Feels like an event. In House of Dragons, that's what it felt like when that first episode came out. And like I said, it was a feeling for a show I haven't had since Game of Thrones Season 8. So I got excited for the show again, and I was ready to get hurt again. And I'm happy to say I was not hurt, because I loved House of Dragons Season 1. I think this is an excellent first season for what I have to believe is going to be a series with many seasons, because this show is extremely popular, and there's so much to talk about. And I think they really nailed it. I always say that the best types of spin-offs and the best types of prequels are the ones that stand on its own. It doesn't rely on nostalgia for an original piece of work that was very popular or very well known to stay relevant, to stay popular. And that's why I love Better Call Saul so much. And with House of Dragons, obviously there's some names you'll hear throughout the show that you've heard in Game of Thrones. There's locations they go to that are in Game of Thrones. But I would say for the most part, this stands on its own, with its own characters, its own problems. And that's the biggest praise I can give this show. I think it has wonderful characters, wonderful plot points that have been explored very well in the season, but there's so much that is set up for season 2. And I'm not going to talk about spoilers. There might be some mid-spoilers that I'll warn you if I do talk about, and they're not even really spoilers, but I'm going to keep this spoiler-free. And it's only because when I review a first season of the show, I like to keep it spoiler-free to get someone who's on the fence to maybe watch it, to give it a chance, watch my review, and then maybe go watch it. I'm telling you now, if you like Game of Thrones, you will love House of Dragons. I've actually talked to people who haven't even seen Game of Thrones, and they've watched House of Dragons and said, yeah, that was great. I'm like, you think that's great? Go fucking watch Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon, yes, I've been calling it House of Dragon or House of Dragons or whatever you want to call it. It's called House of the Dragon. I know, I screwed up the title. But in House of Dragons, yes, here I go again saying it wrong. It's that type of show like Game of Thrones, or in recent shows now like Succession or another HBO show, or like Better Call Saul, where while you're watching it, you just see such care and attention and such craft on display that you know you're watching something super special. And watching House of Dragons, I just felt like I was sucked back into that world of Westeros. I haven't had that feeling in a few years since I've watched Game of Thrones, where the sets are immaculate, the special effects are amazing, the direction, everything looks perfect. It feels like you're back in that world once again. Everything feels grand once again. I haven't had that feeling in a long time, and House of the Dragons captures it perfectly. The one thing I love about House of Dragons so far is they do not hold back on the violence. There is one of the most horrific violent scenes in this show that we've seen in all of the Game of Thrones and House of Dragons lore on screen so far. It was fucking hard to watch, and I'm happy they didn't hold back. I was a little scared since it's 2022. Game of Thrones originally came out in 2011, and they never really held back. I was scared since it's 2022, they might dial back a little bit of the brutality of Westeros. No, they keep it fucking disturbing, which is what it's supposed to be, because Westeros isn't a place you want to live in. It's not a place you want to be. Yes, there's dragons, there's mystical stuff going on, it's fantasy, it's yay, fucking dragons and princesses and princesses. But no, they want to show you that it's fucking awful there. You don't want to be there. And I'm very satisfied they're able to do that. It does feel like we are in that same exact universe as Game of Thrones. The performances here are spectacular. And that's where I'm going to talk about mid-spoilers, mild spoilers. They're not really spoilers, honestly. If you watch the trailer and you see the casting, like, you'd understand that it's not really a spoiler. So if you really don't want to know anything about House of the Dragon, here's your warning. Here's some mild spoilers. But there's some time jumps in this season. We actually get a whole new actress for our main character, Rhaenyra. And both of these actresses give wonderful performances. I love how the younger version is very cheerful and a lot optimistic. She's like, yay, I'm a little princess. There's so much going on. The world is mine to take. And then the older version of Rhaenyra is like this person that's seen a lot of shit. She's not as happy. She's not as optimistic. And I think both of that was played perfectly. And all the other characters as well. It is a little annoying, and I do think that's my one gripe about this season. I don't mind the time jumps themselves, because I think there's a lot of backstory we need to cover here. Because especially if we're going to get into seasons 2, 3, and 4, or however how many seasons are going to be, there's a lot of ground they need to cover in season 1. I think they do that in a good job. My only problem with the time jumps is when we jump from the younger actresses to the older actresses, that episode itself almost feels like another pilot episode. It feels like we're being reintroduced to these characters and even more characters. There's a lot of characters in this show, and that can be a little daunting sometimes and a little frustrating, honestly. And like I said, I do think they do the time jumps fine, because there is so much to cover, and by the end of season 1, there is a lot of things you've learned, and you understand a lot of things moving forward. You got all the backstory. Now these next seasons are about to probably be fucking crazy. But sometimes it was a little jarring. But like I said, everyone does an excellent job, but I think my favorite performance, my favorite character is Matt Smith's Daemon Targaryen. He's such like an asshole, but he's also just really fucking cool. You can't really get a read on the guy. Even by the end of season 1, I really don't know what his intentions are. And I think that's a very complex character with a really great performance as well. One of my favorite parts about this show is that it captures one of my favorite parts about Game of Thrones. I thought the best parts about Game of Thrones was the character building, the world building, and that political scheming in the background, the backstabbing each other, the conversations in the chamber rooms. How are we going to scheme behind this person's back to do this? A Game of Thrones. And that's basically what this whole entire season was. And I absolutely loved it. And in Game of Thrones, it felt like all that was great. And then those epic battles and those epic sequences was a nice cherry on top that had real emotional weight to it. And House of Dragons is basically all of that. All the political scheming, a lot of character building, everything like that. And I think it's a perfect way to set up this world. If I had another complaint besides the time jumps, I guess it's just the idea of Westeros. It seems like we're only confined to King's Landing. I think it was called Driftmark. And that's really about it. Where in Game of Thrones season 1, and I'm just comparing to Game of Thrones, but it's kind of hard not to when you're making a spin-off series, is that Game of Thrones had all these characters and all these different parts of Westeros that we're exploring. And it always had that cool feeling of like, what's going to happen when these other characters meet up with each other? Or what's going on this side of Westeros and that. Since we know most of Westeros, there's not as much world building and exploring that we got in Game of Thrones that maybe we'll explore in other seasons. But here it does seem a little confined to really just King's Landing and Driftmark and Dragonstone. Or maybe those are the same places. I don't know, sometimes you get confused. But it really seemed like they're only confined to like 2 or 3 locations, where Game of Thrones, it seemed like there was like 50 locations that they were going to. But honestly, those are minor complaints. I really was surprised how well this show was made, how much I really enjoyed it. I'm really happy to hear that George R. R. Martin is very involved with the creation process of this show, because he deserves like all the credit in the world. I mean, seasons 1 through 4 Game of Thrones, like I said, are flawless. Now it's basically a lot of just his writing. And so I'm really excited to see what they do with this world. I think this is an excellent first season for the show. It really feels like Game of Thrones is back. And like I said, I'm excited to see what they do. It sucks we're going to have to wait, I think, probably a year and a half for season 2. but I think they did a good job to hook everyone again and get everyone excited again to get back to Westeros. I'm going to give House of the Dragon Season 1 9 Davey Daves. There's a lot of things I still need to catch up on. I'm going to do a fall catch-up review on a lot of different movies that have been out. That Dahmer series, I'll be honest, I haven't finished Lord of the Rings. I'll probably just watch it, and I feel like I need to make a video for that. I will. If you want my take on it so far, I like it. I don't think it's as nearly as good as House of the Dragon, but it's not bad. I don't think it's like the worst thing ever made. Everyone keeps saying it is. I don't know why, but it's okay so far. And once I finish it, maybe if I feel like there needs to be a review, I'll make a review. But I want to let you know that there is a fall catch-up coming up soon with lots of movies and lots of TV shows, and I'm excited to talk about that. But House of the Dragon Season 1. Let me know what you guys thought of it once you've seen it. I'm curious to hear. And thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave's Takes.